Good morning, Robby. How are you?
I'm great, Gary. How are you doing this morning?
Very well. Good to have you, man. Let's jump right in here. I don't have to tell you that Dan Mullen is 0-9 against, or is it 0-8? He's 0 against Alabama and maybe 0-8. But there have been a couple of games that have been really tight games, and Mississippi State is always a tough game for Alabama, particularly there in Starkville. And this is a Bulldog team that's 7-2 and kind of biting at the bit for this opportunity, I get the feeling.
Yeah, they've been really, clamoring for another opportunity against a top team, after the debacles that were the road games against Georgia and Auburn. Those were just disasters for them. Couldn't do anything offensively, couldn't stop Georgia or Auburn on offense. And, this is the best opportunity they're going to have the rest of the season. They have Arkansas and they've got Ole Miss on the schedule after this. Those should be wins for them. So they're not going to play a tougher team on the rest of their schedule. And that's how it is every year when you play Alabama. So this is, I don't want to call it a statement game for Mississippi State, but this is sort of the opportunity for Dan Mullen and this team to really prove themselves, because this year was sort of supposed to be the build-up year to next year, because they don't have a very stout and talented senior class. They're going to be bringing back just about everyone they have on this roster from this year for next year. So a proving point would be to perform well against Alabama in this game, to lead into the rest of the season, and then hopefully roll over into next year as well.
Yeah, Mullen in his 10th season at Mississippi State, second in tenure behind Nick Saban in the SEC. And so, yeah, he is 0-9 against Alabama. This will be the 10th time he's faced the Crimson Tide. Last weekend there in Starkville, Mississippi State really struggled against UMass, as Tennessee had done. They wound up winning the game 34-23, but it was not easy. But I have to think you're sandwiching that game in between the blowout win at Texas A&M and then the game coming up against Alabama. MSU probably even worked some on Alabama last week. Is that the explanation you're hearing for why they struggled as bad as they did against UMass? Just kind of a sandwich game, or is there something else?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of factors. I think you touched on it. It was UMass. It was a team that, it's not a team you're going to take seriously. But at the same time, I mean, UMass was a lot better than I think anyone really ever anticipated. They were 2-6 going into that game, and Dan Mullen told us leading up to that week they are better than the 2-6 team. We're like, oh, okay, Dan, you say this all the time, but no, I mean, this was actually a really solid UMass team. They had one of the better cover corners that State had seen all year. Picked off 2 of Nick Fitzgerald's passes. Their passing, their offense was multifaceted, where they could go hurry up, they can beat you inside the tackle. So I think it was a combination of State was looking ahead to Alabama, because at the press conference, the only questions that Dan Mullen and the players got were about Alabama. So obviously, you're looking ahead to the Crimson Tide, but also at the same time, UMass is a little bit better than the 2-6 team. I think they hadn't played a game that wasn't decided by, or that was decided by 10 or more points, I think just once this year. So every game they had played was close, no matter who it was against. So I think Mullen was a lot happier and a lot more jovial than what he usually is in a post-game press conference. And I think he was just happy just to get that game out of the way, because I think he was a little concerned as to, looking ahead to Alabama and not taking what UMass had seriously, because the Minutemen were way better than I think anyone really ever anticipated.
Yeah, things got a little bit chippy in that game. A couple of Mississippi State players ejected, and Mark Whipple, the Minutemen head coach, not taking to that kindly, had some words with Dan Mullen there. I guess my first question in regards to what happened in that deal, what's the situation with the ejections for MSU? Are those players going to have to sit out the first half against Alabama?
Yeah, so the only player that was ejected was Jonathan Abram.
Oh, just one. Okay, I'm sorry.
Just one on the targeting hit that he had on the quarterback. He will not play the first quarter. Now, he's really become an integral part of the secondary, because MSU doesn't really have a safety like him that can cover the pass. They have Mark McLaurin and Brandon Bryant, but both of those guys are more of enforcing safeties. They're not cover safeties, and Abram's sort of a good hybrid of that. So they won't have him for the first quarter. So if Jalen Hurts and Alabama want to blow the top off of MSU's defense, do it in the first half, because Calvin Ridley and receivers that Jalen Hurts has, they've got the speed to get past those safeties that are a little slow in pass coverage.
Visiting with Robby Donoho, the sports director of WCBI-TV in Columbus, Mississippi, Channel 4 there, where he covers the Mississippi State Bulldogs. I want to talk to you about Dan Mullen and the job that he's done there at Mississippi State. I think it's been quite remarkable. I mean, They've been consistent. Remember, he got them to number 1 in the country. But Alabama, and it's easy to say Alabama's been a nemesis. Alabama's been a nemesis for pretty much everybody. But as I mentioned, 0-9, and at times, Coach Mullen, who can be a little bit surly, has said, he's almost been sarcastic in his praise of Alabama, where he said, well, you know what, they got more 5 stars sitting on their bench than we've recruited since I've been at Mississippi State. And he's made comments like, they should win every game. I mean, they've got, the way they recruit. But at the same time, he has acknowledged Alabama's dominance and said yesterday, the bottom line is you're playing the most dominant program in the country in the last 10 years. So it's not easy to knock off Alabama. I know that. But what would it mean, do you think, for this program with all the people they've beaten under Mullen and all the things they've accomplished and great momentum with the program if they could get a win against the Crimson Tide?
It would be program changing. State doesn't beat Alabama too often, and the times they do beat Alabama, those are immortalized in videos that you see on the Jumbotron during games. I mean, everyone remembers the 1980 game when State got the fumble near the goal line on the number 1 Alabama team coached by Bear Bryant.
Mm-hmm.
They still play that clip over and over again at Mississippi State every single game day. So obviously that game means a little bit, and even the first time they beat Nick Saban under Sly Kroom, which I believe was in 2007
it
or
was.
2006. So everyone still remembers that game too. So if they could beat Alabama, that video is going to run over and over again at Davis Wade for the next 30 years. So that it's a huge deal because, I mean, as much as Alabama is leaps and bounds better than Mississippi State in terms of the type of program, the recruits, the coaching, the players they have, and Mississippi State wants to at least be able to reach out and touch Alabama in terms of being able to get on the same level as them. And that's what, I mean, Dan Mullen has continued to reiterate ever since, the junior year of Dak Prescott, where the Bulldogs got all the way to number 1 in the country, that they are a championship-level program and they're going to play for championships. Alabama does that year in and year out. And for MSU to even be within a stone's throw of what Alabama does year in and year out, that's the goal. And to get a win like that would sort of show that MSU's sort of on that track again.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And you're right about Sly Kroom. He had some issues, but he beat Alabama back-to-back, 2006 over
right.
Mike Shula in 2007, that first year that Nick Saban was in Tuscaloosa. They won there in Starkville. When you look at Mullen, I mean, it is, as I said, I think it's pretty remarkable. This is a program that has not sustained success throughout its history. Of course, Jackie Sherrill came in there and had some really good teams. But for the most part, they've been in the lower tier of the SEC. But you look at his record, 68-44 overall, 32-37, which might not sound great in the SEC, but it's pretty doggone good when you look at what some of these coaches have done. 7 straight bowl games. He's won 9 games twice, 10 games another time. They've got 7 wins already. What's the chatter in regards to him and all these potential openings, particularly the one that's already vacant at Florida? What's the feeling in there in Starkville? Is that Mississippi State is going to be able to hang on to him, or he might be making a move after this season?
And that's a great question, Gary. It seems like it comes up every year. What jobs are Dan Mullen going to be linked to? It seems to happen all the time, and everyone, sort of all of us in Starkville just sort of shrug it off like, okay, he's linked to another job in the SEC or the ACC or the Big Ten. Okay, that's fine. He's going to stay. But I mean, we've known for a while, for the last 2 to 3 years, that he's ready for a change. He's ready for a new challenge. But it's hard to see him leave Mississippi State right now with what he does have returning next year, which I sort of mentioned a little bit earlier. Next year is going to be the best Mississippi State team that he has had in his nearly decade-long tenure in Starkville. And even better than that 2014 with Dak Prescott that made it all the way to number 1. Next year's team is going to be better in terms of talent and ability.
Wow.
And for him to, just to get up and leave with what he has coming back next year, I think a lot of us would be surprised. Now, I think the chatter and sort of everything that's being talked about behind the scenes with the Florida job is just not going to work. And a lot of people will make the connection, well, he was at Florida under Urban Meyer. Scott Strickland, the athletic director of Florida, was at Mississippi State. He and Scott Strickland didn't really see eye to eye. Strickland is more of a hard-handed approach kind of athletic director where he jumps in and takes control of everything. Mullen wants to have a say on his program and what he does. and he didn't really like the strong arm approach that Scott Strickland did. And I know they had it out a couple times in the past from what I heard. I don't think the Florida job is going to materialize. I think more likely job would probably be the Tennessee position, but I don't know if he and Tennessee really work or mesh or coexist well. I know everyone's going to make those connections, but I think really and truly, you have to look at, from Mullen's perspective, right now, Tennessee's not on the same level as Mississippi State. The kind of recruits and the kind of players that the Bulldogs have coming in and the talent they have right now, they beat Tennessee on a yearly basis if they play them. And right now you have to look at, from Mullen's perspective, hey, I need to get a better job. I'm already getting paid as one of the top, 20 coaches in America. I'm going to have to go to a bigger program. And right now, really the only programs that I talked about this with some of my friends about, Mullen going somewhere else. Really the only real programs you can think about him going would be top-tier programs like, say, in Notre Dame. If Brian Kelly had a bad year this year, Notre Dame had to fire Brian Kelly, I think Mullen would definitely go for the Notre Dame job. But it's kind of hard to think, because he's a Pennsylvania guy, it's kind of hard to see him really going anywhere else west of the Mississippi, and he wants to go north, I think. But right now, I don't foresee him really being connected to any more jobs, and they don't really seem to make sense for him.
I hear you, and he's making great money there at Mississippi State, and he's got tenure, so you're right. He's got a good job. I definitely agree with you there. Last year in Tuscaloosa, Mississippi State got rolled 51-3, and Nick Fitzgerald, who was having a good season, of course, this year he's having a great season. I mean, he was just he was limited in that game. I mean, the offense was just not productive. What do you think Mississippi State will look to do with Fitzgerald this year? Can they take anything from that game last year and apply it to get him going a little bit and get this offense, in a rhythm against this Alabama defense on Saturday night? What do you think the game plan will be?
I think the game plan is going to be just short, simple routes to start because, I've compared Nick Fitzgerald to a streaky shooter in basketball where if he sees the ball go in the net a couple times, he starts to get a little confidence. He starts to get even more accurate and more of a stronger arm when he's passing. So I think Mullen is going to keep it simple early on. I think, Mississippi State is probably one of the few teams in the country that run the quarterback just from straight out of a shotgun, just run quarterback draws as much as anyone in the country. That doesn't really work against Alabama, especially against their front four and the linebackers they have. So I think you're going to see the game plan and the playbook change a little bit. As much as you hear Mississippi State saying, we don't have to change anything, we're going to play as ourselves. No, you're going to have to change your philosophy and your offense to be able to beat Alabama. And the one aspect that I think Alabama is vulnerable is on the back end of the secondary, especially, deep routes. And Mississippi State does not have a deep threat whatsoever with this offense. And that's really what's been holding back this offense all year is that they really don't have someone that can blow the top off the defense. They don't have the speed or quickness or a guy that can get downfield and beat a man one-on-one. And not having that, I think, is really going to limit you offensively against such a tough Alabama defense, even with the possibility of Micah Fitzpatrick not being 100% or even not having Sean Dion Hamilton at linebacker. Your options are limited as an offense so in the ways that you can beat Alabama, especially on the ground. So I think you're going to see Mullen try to add in some more, flavor to this offense and try to change things up a little bit because, what they did against UMass with, the 2 touchdowns they scored in the second half, it was just straight run from Nick Fitzgerald from the shotgun. That's not going to work against Alabama, and they're going to have to try to change it up to try to at least keep the game close towards the end, which is what they would like to do at least.
Absolutely. We'll find out on Saturday night. Great stuff, Robby. By the way, you can follow Robby on Twitter at Robby Donoho. Thanks a lot, man.
All right. Thanks, Gary. Have a good one.